Hey everyone! Welcome back to Anime Dreams, your go-to spot for epic fanfics and anime twists. Today, we're diving into part 3 of our ongoing story, What If Naruko Encountered Her Ancestor? Quick disclaimer. All content on this channel is purely for entertainment and discussion. I do not own any of the anime footage featured. All rights belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. Alright, let's jump right into it. Ichigo arrived at the memorial stone, the gentle splash of water announcing his presence. He noticed Kakashi standing in front of the stone, reading a small orange book with a faint smile. Ichigo approached calmly. "I thought I'd find you here, Hatake," he said in a neutral tone, prompting Kakashi to turn around. Without ceremony, Ichigo gently placed Sasuke down on the ground. Kakashi's expression shifted slightly, a hint of concern crossing his features as he registered the situation. Before Kakashi could speak, Ichigo explained, Sasuke attacked his teammates with a fire-style technique. He said they were holding him back from his personal goals. Ichigo watched Kakashi closely. Seeing no reaction, he added more calmly, both Sakura and Naruko were caught in the blast. They were injured. Still, Kakashi showed no visible concern for anyone but Sasuke, focusing solely on the Uchiha. Disappointed, Ichigo continued, "I only rendered him unconscious and brought him here to you, his sensei. I thought you'd prefer to handle it personally." Kakashi gave a cool response. "Leave him to me. My team matters are not your concern." With that, he picked Sasuke up and disappeared in a flicker toward the hospital. Ichigo watched him go with a quiet sigh. He only seems to care about that Uchiha prodigy. "Poor Naruko and Sakura," he murmured with a furrowed brow, then turned away and walked back toward the heart of the village. "I think I need a break." T Street, downtown Konoha, 15:27 hours. Anko Mitarashi placed her third empty sake bottle on the counter and let out a satisfied breath. "Ah! That hit the spot," she cheered, happily reaching for a stick of dango. From across the bar, a man who had clearly enjoyed too much sake of his own approached, swaying slightly. "Hey there," he greeted with a slurred voice and a sheepish grin. Anko tried to ignore him, but his persistent presence and strong breath made it difficult. "Why don't you join me for a drink?" he asked, leaning closer. She glanced sideways, clearly unimpressed. The man reached toward her playfully, but before he could get too close, a firm hand clamped down on his shoulder, causing him to stiffen and take a shaky step back. A tall blond man had stepped forward, his tone calm yet commanding. "Step aside." His gaze alone was enough to send the intoxicated man stumbling away to the far corner of the room. Ichigo took a seat beside Anko at the bar without another word. She raised an eyebrow and gave him a curious look. There was something familiar about him, the resemblance to the fourth Hokage was hard to ignore. Still, she let it go. "I could have handled that," she said casually. Ichigo shrugged. "He was in my way. I just wanted to sit down." Anko chuckled, amused. Straightforward and calm under pressure. "Not bad. Haven't seen you around before. I'm Anko Mitarashi. What's your name?" "Ichigo Suzumiya," he replied simply, ordering a drink and a plate of pork dumplings. "Just arrived in the village last week." Anko glanced at the swords on his back. "Looks like a ninjato and a kadachi. Definitely trained in kenjutsu. But his build suggests taijutsu skill too." Curious, she continued the conversation. "So, where'd you come from?" "Nowhere in particular," he answered. "I've traveled a lot, learned a few things along the way. Eventually, I ended up here. Applied for a shinobi position and was granted jounin status. The Hokage asked me to keep an eye on a young ninja named Naruko." That name made Anko sit up a bit straighter. She had once been on Naruko's protection team. Over time, she had grown fond of the young girl. Naruko had always been cheerful despite the way people treated her. She reminded Anko a bit of herself, misunderstood, often alone, yet still kind. Ichigo's expression softened. I know what she carries inside. But that's never been an excuse for how she was treated. It reminded me of my own childhood. I was always seen as different because of my abilities. People didn't understand, so they kept their distance. Anko gave a small smile. I know who you're talking about. I used to watch over her when she was younger. Even when she couldn't see me, she always seemed to know I was nearby. She'd wave, sometimes even leave flowers behind. Once, she thanked me with a little drawing she made. She's a sweet girl. Strong too. She paused, thinking back fondly on the times she comforted Naruko through bad dreams or cheered her up when things got tough. She's been through more than most, but she never lets it stop her. Ichigo nodded, his tone respectful. She has more strength than people realize. Ichigo let out a quiet chuckle as he poured himself a bit more sake from the freshly opened bottle. Yeah. She's a pretty impressive kid. She caught me training one day, gave me these wide, eager eyes, and asked if I could show her a few things. He laughed softly, but his expression shifted as he continued. I taught her some basic grappling, meditation, and chakra control techniques. Honestly, she picked it all up so fast it surprised me. I couldn't believe it when I found out she was ranked last in her class. That really made me wonder, if she's such a quick learner, what's been going on at the academy? Anko narrowed her eyes in thought. She had always known that some people at the academy hadn't exactly supported Naruko's enrollment, but the idea that they might have gone so far as to neglect her training was unsettling. That's just wrong. They really didn't give her a fair chance. Exactly. She's graduated now and been assigned to a team, but her current sensei leaves a lot to be desired. Who's her sensei? Kakashi Hatake. Anko went still at the name. She clearly remembered the time when Kakashi's Anbu unit had replaced hers, and things had started to go downhill soon after. Now he's her Jounin instructor? She thought, her concern growing. What about the rest of her team? She asked cautiously. A girl named Sakura Haruno, who's a bit of a fan of another teammate, Sasuke Uchiha. Anko frowned slightly. She had once seen several Uchiha giving Naruko a hard time, and now she had to work alongside one? And with a teammate who idolized him? That sounded like a recipe for tension. Ichigo noticed the shift in her mood as he ate a pork dumpling. Yeah, I feel the same. That Uchiha kid actually tried to use a fire technique on Naruko during training while Kakashi had her tied to a post. I stepped in, untied her, and brought the situation to Kakashi to handle. And what did he do? Let the kid off easy? Anko guessed, unimpressed. Exactly. I was so frustrated I came here to clear my head. Ichigo admitted, continuing his meal. The two of them chatted for a bit, trading stories and insights. He learned that Anko was a Tokubutsu Jounin, same age as him, 24, and this bar was one of her favorite places to unwind. He sensed there were some difficult moments in her past, but didn't press. Everyone has a story, after all. As the evening wore on, Ichigo began to glance toward the door. I should probably head out. I'll see you around, Anko. Sure thing. Take care, Ichigo. Just as he stepped out, one of Anko's friends, Kurenai Yui, entered the bar. Hey, Anko, the crimson-eyed Kunoichi greeted warmly. Kure-chan. Anko beamed. So, how's it going with your team of young hopefuls? Kurenai let out a tired sigh. One barely speaks, one's a bit overly enthusiastic about romance, and the girl is so quiet and shy, I almost can't believe she's from the Hyuga clan. Sounds like quite the team, Anko teased with a smile. Kurenai shifted topics. So, who was that guy you were talking to earlier? Anko glanced around before speaking quietly. She trusted Kurenai, and this wasn't something she'd share with just anyone. Remember when I was assigned to be part of the team guarding the Uzumaki girl? Kurenai nodded, picking up on the seriousness in Anko's voice. Well, that guy's been helping keep an eye on her lately. With the team Naruko's been placed on, she's going to need the support. Kurenai's expression grew somber. She, too, remembered the team assignments. Naruko had been placed with Kakashi, the same jounin who had previously failed to properly protect her. Adding Sasuke Uchiha and a classmate who admired him to the mix didn't make things any easier. She had a sinking feeling that Kakashi might be repeating a familiar mistake, much like the Sandaime Hokage had done with his own team. Kurenai had studied extensively on how to be a proper mentor, and she remembered hearing from Asuma how the Sandaime had once favored a particularly talented student. That favoritism had lasting consequences. Now, it looked like history might be repeating itself. Those three might present a real challenge, Anko shared quietly with her friend, her voice edged with concern. Naruko's been reaching out to him, trying to offer guidance, probably because she knows Kakashi won't be much help in that area. That Uchiha kid might become envious over the smallest things? And that Haruno girl? She practically idolizes him, which could complicate things even more. Kurenai nodded thoughtfully. She understood that Anko had grown attached to Naruko, almost like an older sister figure. Kurenai herself had observed the young Uzumaki girl one day and had been taken aback by the way others treated her. It was troubling to witness, but even more surprising was how Naruko handled it all, calmly, with a smile, showing resilience far beyond her years. Kurenai had hoped to have Naruko placed on her own team, but things hadn't worked out that way. She also had her own reservations about Kakashi. His public reading habits were questionable, his punctuality was non-existent, and he often came across as far too laid back. The two kunoichi sat together for a while, talking as they usually did before eventually heading their separate ways. Later that evening, before settling in for the night, Kurenai silently wished Ichigo the best of luck, he would definitely need it, and hoped for Naruko's well-being. She wasn't quite sure when it had happened, but somewhere along the way, that lively, spirited girl with golden hair had carved out a special place in her heart. Time skip, August 19th. 3 months had quietly passed since Ichigo arrived and took on the role of watching over the young Jinchuriki. Life with Team 7 remained a bit of a challenge. Their routine rarely changed. Kakashi would lead them through a mission, then vanish for the rest of the day, only to repeat the same pattern the next. Ichigo made a habit of helping Naruko in secret, offering her helpful taijutsu techniques and assisting with her chakra control. His efforts increased after noticing Kakashi was giving Sasuke exclusive guidance and focused attention. The thought of how things might have turned out for Naruko if he hadn't been there unsettled him, but he chose not to dwell on it too long. At one point, Naruko asked if Sakura could join the training sessions. However, the pink-haired girl politely declined, preferring instead to observe Sasuke and support him from a distance. Ichigo simply sighed with quiet concern. "Naruko, remember this," he said sincerely, "you offered help to a teammate, and she chose not to accept it. That decision is hers to make. If challenges come her way because of it, that responsibility isn't yours." Meanwhile, Ichigo and Anko had developed a comfortable friendship. He appreciated having someone his own age to talk to, and she valued having a supportive friend outside her usual circle of Kurenai and Ibiki. Her honesty, lively nature, and sharp sense of humor drew him in. In truth, Anko reminded him of someone special from his past, and it brought both comfort and a tinge of nostalgia. Anko enjoyed his light-hearted side, especially when he pulled a harmless prank by transforming into Kakashi wearing one of Guy's famously tight training outfits and running through the village, shouting spirited encouragements about youth. Team 7 had chased after him, bewildered and embarrassed. It became a memory they all laughed about later. Though Ichigo and Anko hadn't shared everything about their pasts, their bond continued to grow. Through her, he also became better acquainted with Kurenai and Asuma, slowly expanding his circle of trusted friends in the village. Through Kurenai, Naruko met Team 8 and its members. Her first impression of Kiba was that he seemed like an ordinary boy her age, full of energy and a bit impulsive. Shino was so quiet and reserved that it was easy to overlook his presence. Hinata had already met Naruko before, but she remained incredibly shy and often struggled to express herself. This worried Naruko a little, as it wasn't typical for someone so young to seem that withdrawn. Even without knowing the full story, Naruko could sense something wasn't quite right. One day, she asked Kurenai about Hinata's family, and the crimson-eyed Kunoichi let out a soft sigh, confirming some of Naruko's concerns. Kurenai explained that Hinata's father, Hyashi Hyuga, had passed on the role of clan heir to Hinata's younger sister, Hanabi. The inner workings of the Hyuga clan were complicated, but even so, it was clear that Hinata's confidence had been affected deeply. Hearing this only strengthened Naruko's determination to support her friends and honor the kindness shown to her by Guren, someone who had helped her during a difficult time. After one of teammates' training sessions, Naruko approached the gentle Hyuga heiress with a warm smile. "Oh, Hinata-chan. It's lovely to see you this afternoon," she greeted cheerfully. Hinata let out a tiny surprised sound, but quickly turned and offered a respectful bow. "Hello, and Naruko-san," she replied timidly. "How are you today?" "Oh, I'm doing all right. Say, would you mind taking a short walk with me through the village? I can tell something's on your mind, and maybe talking it out could help." She looked unsure, but after a moment's hesitation, decided it couldn't hurt. He seemed friendly enough, and she might gain some helpful advice. "Oh, okay," she replied softly as they began walking down T Street, the bustling heart of the village's commerce. He remembered from a past conversation with Kurenai that Hinata adored cinnamon rolls, so he gently guided their steps toward a nearby bakery. As the warm scent of baked goods filled the air, he took a deep breath. Smells amazing. Hold on a second, Hina-chan," he said with a cheerful tone before darting inside. Moments later, he returned with 2 freshly baked cinnamon rolls, one for himself, and one for her. He motioned toward a nearby bench, inviting her to sit. "Now," he said kindly, "would you like to tell me what's been bothering you?" Hinata sighed, taking a deep breath as she began sharing some of the struggles she faced at home and how she felt in her daily life. When she finished, she looked weary, as though carrying a weight far too heavy for someone her age. Ichigo quietly reflected on what he'd heard while eating his roll, silently wishing for a glass of milk to go with it. So instead of taking responsibility as a parent, he places the burden on her shoulders. That's just not right, he thought, his expression softening when he remembered Hinata's feelings for Naruko. They talked more about it, and Hinata admitted she had admired Naruko from a distance, held back by fear and uncertainty. Ichigo gently encouraged her to be honest, even in small steps. Over the next few months, Hinata gradually began to open up to Naruko, a shared conversation here, a trip to Ichiraku Ramen there, all with Ichigo quietly watching from a distance to make sure things went smoothly. However, Hinata's teammate, Kiba Inuzuka, noticed what was happening and didn't take it well. He had grown overly possessive of Hinata, mistakenly believing she should only spend time with him. One day, when he saw Hinata and Naruko enjoying a meal together at Ichiraku's, he made up his mind to interrupt. As he strode down the street with determination, he didn't notice Kurenai observing him from across the way. From the look on Kiba's face, she could tell something wasn't right. "Kiba! Stop right there," she called firmly. Kiba froze at the sound of his sensei's voice, but tried to remain calm as he turned to face her. "What is it, Kurenai-sensei?" he asked. "Where do you think you're going? I hope it's not to interfere with 2 friends simply enjoying their day." "You're absolutely right. Naruko has no reason to be around Hinata like that. She should be with me," he blurted out, his emotions getting the better of him. Kurenai stared at him, clearly taken aback. "Kiba Inuzuka, that is not how we treat others, especially not our teammates. Hinata is her own person and deserves to choose her own path. You and I will be having a long conversation with your mother and sister about the way you're thinking." Kiba's confidence quickly faded. He knew his mother, Sume, and his sister, Hana, would not take kindly to what he had said, especially when it came to respecting others. Meanwhile, Naruko had begun making impressive progress in her training under Ichigo's guidance. Her taijutsu had become more refined thanks to Ichigo's teachings in Muay Thai, Taekwondo, and Jiu-Jitsu. When Anko introduced Ichigo to chakra nature affinity cards, she tested Naruko and discovered she had both wind and water affinities, just like Ichigo, which made him smile with pride. This similarity made elemental training much smoother. Ichigo didn't know any formal jutsu, as his style relied on manipulating water and wind directly. Fortunately, Anko offered to teach Naruko water-based techniques, as it was one of her own affinities. Wind, on the other hand, proved more difficult since wind users were rare. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, suggested Ichigo reach out to his son, Asuma, who possessed wind affinity. Luckily, Team 10 trained in a clearing not far from where Ichigo and Naruko trained. One day, Ichigo decided to visit Team 10. He arrived in a gentle swirl of water, causing Asuma to glance over with curiosity. Ichigo gave a casual nod to Shikamaru, who returned it with his usual laid-back air. "Asuma, I've got a favor to ask," Ichigo said. "And what do I get in return?" Asuma asked with a slight smirk. Ichigo smiled warmly. "I'd be happy to train your team in some of my taijutsu techniques, along with any other skills you think they'd benefit from." Asuma considered the offer for a moment before nodding. "Sounds fair. What do you need in return?" "I'd appreciate it if you could teach Naruko a few wind release techniques, start with some D rank, and maybe a C rank if you feel comfortable. She hasn't received the same attention as others, and I think it's time someone stepped up." Ichigo explained, briefly outlining the situation with Kakashi and Sasuke. Asuma's expression darkened slightly. In his view, favoritism wasn't just unfair, it was wrong. Kakashi's clear focus on Sasuke while neglecting Naruko didn't sit right with him. It was refreshing to see someone willing to support the girl, who in his eyes should be acknowledged and appreciated, not ignored. "You've got a deal. In return, I'd like you to help talk to Ino. She's been struggling with her self-image and has been following unhealthy habits because of her crush on Sasuke. Both her father and I have tried to help, but she won't listen." Ichigo glanced at the young girl and noticed how slender she looked, almost too much so. "She's still growing. But she looks so fragile," he said gently, concern in his tone. "I'll talk to her. I'll do what I can to help her feel better about herself. And while I'm at it, I'll give Kuji some confidence training and find a way to keep Shikamaru motivated. Ino's struggle seems to stem from her self-esteem. I've just never seen it manifest this strongly in someone so young." Asuma was impressed. In such a short time, Ichigo had read his team's struggles and was already offering a plan to help each of them grow. One question still lingered in his mind, though. "I don't think we've officially met. Who are you, really?" Ichigo simply smiled. "Ask your father. Tell him I said I trust you," he replied before vanishing in a swirl of water, leaving the Shin'an a bit stunned. Later, Asuma was given a partial truth. Ichigo was a relative of Naruko who had returned upon learning she was alive and in need of guidance. He used an alias to avoid drawing attention. Knowing this, Asuma's respect for Ichigo only grew. Unfortunately, his opinion of Kakashi diminished when he learned the famed Jonin had been entrusted with Naruko's care by the fourth Hokage, yet seemed to overlook her entirely. True to his word, Ichigo committed himself to helping the young shinobi. He taught Kuji how to use his size to his advantage through grappling techniques, and introduced Shikamaru to Tai Chi Quan, a martial art that suited his thoughtful and relaxed nature. Meanwhile, Asuma fulfilled his part of the agreement by teaching Naruko a few basic wind-style jutsu, including the C-rank wind release, Great Breakthrough, which could help disorient opponents and buy time in combat. Helping Ino proved more challenging. Her focus on appearance and belief that Sasuke liked only certain types of girls created a barrier. Seeking help, Ichigo turned to Kurenai and Anko for advice, and soon came up with a different approach. He invited Ino to take a peaceful walk through the village. "Ino, can I ask you something personal? What qualities do you look for in someone you'd like to be with? It's just between us, I promise not to tell anyone." Caught off guard but feeling safe with him, Ino gave the question some thought. "Well, he'd have to be kind, funny, smile a lot, and like me for who I am." Ichigo nodded thoughtfully. "That's wonderful. Now, can I ask just one more thing? Do you think Sasuke reflects those qualities?" Ino fell quiet. The more she thought about it, the more she realized the boy she admired didn't smile, didn't speak kindly, and rarely showed any warmth. After a long pause, she finally spoke, "Ichigo-sensei. Could you walk me home? I need some time to think." "Of course, Ino-chan," he said gently, buying her a few skewers of dango to take home. At her doorstep, he gave her a supportive pat on the shoulder. "Take your time, Ino. I know you'll find your way." A week later, Ino returned to practice looking more energetic and healthier. Asuma, puzzled, asked Ichigo what had happened. The older man smiled. "She's starting to let go of her old ideas. She's grown a bit since we spoke." During training that day, Ino found herself reflecting on everything. Watching Sasuke from a distance without her usual admiration, she saw someone who rarely smiled and often acted aloof. In contrast, she remembered how her teammates had always stood up for her, even when she wasn't very kind to them. She also thought of Naruko, who constantly tried to help her teammates, even when they brushed her off. Naruko had even stood up to Sasuke once for being too harsh with Sakura, who rarely treated her kindly. Most of all, Ino thought of Ichigo. He had taken the time to help her, to listen, and to guide her without judgment. He made her feel seen, and that kindness had changed something inside her. She realized that someone who truly cared would appreciate her for who she really was. After training, she approached Ichigo and gently took his hand. Without a word, she led him back to the dango shop from their earlier walk. "Sensei," she began softly, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. And I wanted to thank you." She motioned for him to lean down, then gave him a quick kiss on the cheek before wrapping her arms around him in a heartfelt hug. "Thank you for helping me see what really matters." Ichigo was pleasantly surprised by how the former fangirl had taken his advice to heart. She knelt down and hugged him gently, gratitude evident in her embrace. Passers-by smiled warmly at the heartwarming scene between the two. The girl continued to cry softly for a few more moments until exhaustion finally overtook her. She had trained hard that day, and her energy had run out. With great care, Ichigo lifted the girl into his arms and carried her home. Inoki was initially alarmed when he saw his daughter unconscious, but quickly relaxed when Ichigo explained she was only tired from a long day of training. Together, they brought her upstairs and made sure she was comfortable in bed. Inoki asked Ichigo to stay for a moment while he went to retrieve his coat. During the wait, his wife Akari offered Ichigo a cup of tea and thanked him for supporting their daughter. As they chatted, she grew more curious about the young man her husband had mentioned on several occasions. Their conversation took an interesting turn when she asked, "Ichigo-kun, are you currently seeing anyone special in the village?" The unexpected question nearly made him cough into his tea, but he managed to smile and answered that he wasn't. Silently, Akari wished they had an older daughter to introduce him to, or that Ino was a little older, so she could aim for someone more kind-hearted than the aloof Uchiha boy. Ichigo was saved from any further questions when Inoki returned, and the two men headed out to a familiar local bar. Much to Inoki's surprise, the Nara and Akimichi clan heads were already there and waved them over to their table. Kuza and Shikaku had heard of the young man who had such a positive influence on their children's confidence and had wanted to meet him personally. Shikaku admitted he hadn't seen his son this motivated in years, and Kuza appreciated the newfound confidence in his own boy. But it was Inoki who was the most thankful. Ichigo had helped his daughter overcome harmful self-doubt and rebuild her self-worth, without any influence from the aloof Uchiha boy she had once admired. Asuma later heard about the conversation Ichigo had with her and was relieved that the girl was now doing much better. As a gesture of appreciation, he gifted Naruko a small scroll containing some advanced wind-style techniques, including Fuuten, Furyudan and Repiso, moves that would work well with Naruko's large chakra reserves. Anko also played a big role in Naruko's development. She shared several water-style techniques she had mastered, such as Teppaudama, Mijirappa, Suryudan, and Suijin Heki, and even helped Naruko improve her throwing skills. As Anko humorously put it, "You need a bit more precision in your aim, so let's fix that together." She also emphasized that these new abilities should remain a secret for now, especially around Kakashi and his team, to avoid unnecessary tension or attention. At that very moment, Team 7 was on their way to the Hokage Tower for their next mission. Naruko walked quietly behind her teammates. She had learned that sometimes silence was her best tool, allowing her to observe, learn what motivated those around her, and become more strategic in understanding them. Sakura still displayed signs of her admiration for Sasuke, often trying to get his attention, only to be met with indifference. Despite having outgrown her old feelings, Naruko still tried to support Sakura as a teammate, only to occasionally be met with frustration. Meanwhile, Sasuke had been receiving one-on-one training with Kakashi ever since the formation of Team 7. Thanks to his Sharingan, Kakashi had access to a vast array of techniques and combat skills from shinobi across the nations, including styles borrowed from Konoha's own taijutsu expert, Mito Gai. Ichigo had met Gai and his team shortly after arriving in the village. Although Gai's energetic personality was a bit overwhelming at first, Ichigo respected him immensely as a teacher. Gai treated all his students equally, whether it was Neji, who had earned top marks the previous year, or Rock Lee, who faced unique challenges due to a condition in his chakra network that made ninjutsu and genjutsu nearly impossible for him. Still, Lee's unwavering determination had earned Gai's mentorship, and the two trained hard in taijutsu together. What deeply bothered Ichigo, however, was how Kakashi had copied those techniques and handed them over to Sasuke without Gai's consent. The Goken fighting style was a symbol of Gai's pride and legacy, a tradition he should have had the right to share with someone of his own choosing. Ichigo had kept a close eye on Team 7 and had observed how Kakashi would have Naruko train on her own while focusing his attention solely on Sasuke, with Sakura often cheering him on. This unfair treatment didn't sit well with Ichigo, and it didn't go unnoticed by the Hokage either, once Ichigo submitted his reports. Hokage Tower, 8:30 hours. Team 7 entered the Hokage Tower, heading straight for the mission hall. Kakashi gave a respectful nod to the Hokage and approached to request their next assignment. Let's see. We have helping Mrs. Kurogane with her garden, cleaning the Inuzuka kennels, babysitting a set of triplets. The Hokage murmured as he sifted through the available D-rank missions. Naruko let out a soft sigh. Another simple mission? Oh well. She thought to herself, careful not to voice her disappointment aloud. The last thing she wanted was to start the morning with Sakura getting frustrated. Sasuke, on the other hand, didn't bother hiding his feelings. These missions won't help me improve. I need more challenging work if I'm going to awaken my Sharingan, he said with quiet frustration. Iruka stepped in promptly, addressing the comment with a firm but kind tone. You only graduated from the academy 3 months ago. D-rank missions help build discipline and teamwork. Give it some time, he advised. Kakashi glanced at Iruka, his voice calm but resolute. This is my team, Chonin. I'll decide when they're ready. I believe we're prepared for a C-rank mission. The Hokage gave a long sigh before nodding. All right, he agreed. Bring in Tazuna. Soon after, a man entered the hall. His walk was slightly unsteady, and he appeared to be in his late 50s or early 60s. He glanced over the team and frowned. These kids are supposed to protect me? Especially that small blonde one? He muttered skeptically. Naruko stood quietly, doing her best to stay calm and composed despite the man's unkind tone. Just breathe. Stay focused. In with the calm, out with the stress. She reminded herself. Kakashi quickly stepped in to smooth things over. Tazuna-san, I'm a jounin, and Sasuke has strong potential. You'll be in good hands, he said reassuringly, though Naruko still felt her patience being tested. The mission was explained. They were to accompany Tazuna to the Land of Waves and provide protection while he completed construction on a bridge. The mission involved guarding him from potential trouble along the way. As Team 7 left to prepare, a figure entered through the window with swift, practiced ease. Ichigo. Ichigo, I take it you've been listening? The Hokage asked. Yes, sir, Ichigo replied. Good. You'll be assigned to observe the mission from the shadows. Submit a detailed report of everything that happens. Your observations will be compared to Kakashi's report. Do not interfere unless the team is in serious danger. For this task, you'll be temporarily assigned to the Anbu. Visit the quartermaster for your uniform and mask. Understood. I'll get my gear and begin the assignment. I'll make sure everyone returns safely, Ichigo affirmed with a salute before vanishing in a swift breeze. The Hokage settled back into his chair, lighting his pipe thoughtfully. Well, Kakashi. Let's see how accurately you report this mission. Thank you so much for your continued love and support, my dear YouTube family. It truly means the world to me. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with all the amazing content coming your way. Until next time, take care and keep dreaming. With love. Anime Dreams.